I welcome back to this section where I will continue talking to you about the different types of inputs feeds that we have, and we have been able to look at the type of date, the type of time, text, number, and so on and so forth. So moving forward now, we are going to look at the type file. We look at time the other time. Now we are going to look at file. That's if you want the user to upload a file. And don't forget that if you are taking a file in a form, don't forget to specify this property, which is the encryption type, and make sure it is multi-parts form data. So otherwise this file will not be posted to the server. So but that is not really of we are not paying attention to that aspect for now. So we have another type in input feed, which is called type file, and that is used to take file from your user. So if you save this now, you're going to be having this display. So where the user will have the chance or the privilege to open this. Once they click this, it will take them to the folder directory or file explorer so that they can choose any file they wish to upload as the case may be. So if the user selects okay, the user selects maybe this particular picture, then it's going to be selected for them. Now one thing I want you to pay attention to in working with file is that you can choose the type of format of file that you want to accept, and with the property called accept. So let's say I just want to accept only PDF file. So I just say .pdf. If I save it now and I open this and let me just let me refresh this. Now if I choose this, if I open, you see that the only file that shows here is just the PDF file, because that input feed can only accept or open a PDF format. So if you want it to only accept PDF and maybe document, so you can decide to specify the type of document that you want to take or the format type of document that you want to take. Okay, you want to take pictures too, you can put the JPG and so on and so forth. So with the accept property, you can specify the type of file that you want your inputs to take. Now, having done that, let's now move to the next input type, which is the select. Which is the select, and this select is just like a drop down which give you permission or access to select one value from the name. So and that is done using the tag select, and under this tag select you're going to be specifying the options of the select form feed. Now, the label too applies for the input feed, where you specify, okay, maybe you specify this, let's say you want user to choose their country, and you can just say label for, okay, sorry, so you have to specify the label, but it's up to you. So it's going to take a property called for, and I'm going to call this country, and this is not supposed to be here. So in between the label tag, I'm going to be specifying that I want user to enter their country. So just like we have been doing before, now you can specify some properties for this select input feed, and that is you can specify the ID, which I said it's advisable to make it to be the same with this for property of the previous label. And you can also specify the name, which is of importance when you post it to the server. You can also make it to be country, and you can also make it to be required that means you don't want the user to submit the form without choosing a particular option here. So let's say this first option is always like, okay, maybe it's void, like just to give that an idea of what the user an idea of what the drop down is all about. You can just tell them that maybe select your country, select your country. So from there you can then go to the second option by duplicating this using Alt Shift down arrow, and possibly the first one is maybe USA, and just duplicate and Canada, and you can just specify the last to be maybe South Africa, and you also specify the value. That means when the user selects USA, what should be the value that should be marked with that USA? You can decide to make it USA this time around and make it to be the same name. It does not have to be the same thing that the user is saying that is going to be passed as a value. So you can make this to be maybe South Africa, as as the case may be. So if you save this now, you see that we have, okay, let me break this one more time so that we can see our elements properly. So you see that we have a drop down that is specifying, that is showing the option. This first option is what you can see here. Select your country. So if I open the drop down, I can see this drop down of that I've predefined or that I've programmed into the select feed. Now the next input feed that I want us to look at is the radio button. And this radio button is used to specify different options for the user, whereas the user is able to select one out of the several radio buttons that are possibly specified. So we are going to be wrapping this around the div tool, and as usual we are going to be having a label, and this time around the label is going to be, maybe let's say we want the user to enter let's say we want the user to let's say we want the user to enter their gender. So we are going to be specifying gender here. So gender of the user. So in there we are still, it's still going to be an input feed. It's just that the type will not be number, will not be text, will not be file. It's going to be type of radio. So where the user is able to select just one input, just one option out of the other listed uh, values. So ID, you need to specify the ID of this to maybe the ID of the first one is male, and the name is the name is gender, and the value for this first one is male. That means if the user select this first one, then they need to they need to the value that be attached to their entry or to their selection is going to be made. So you need to now specify what the, because if I save it now, you see that the user can only see a circle or something that they can choose or select or mark. But now you need to specify that option for the user to know that, okay, if I'm selecting that particular one, then I know that I am selecting male, my gender to be male. So you can put a full column here so that give the user, okay, when I select this, then I know that I'm selecting male. Now let's go for the second option, which we are still going to be repeating the same thing, but the only thing that make them to be uniform is that the name must be the same. We are still going to be defining an input feed here, which is also still going to be a type of radio, and you can make the ID, since you can make the ID this time around to be a female, because you're going to be writing a label for female in the next line. Now you are going to have a name. The name must be the same so that we know that, okay, when you send the response to the server, then if the user pick female, then the value for female is going to be, sorry, the value for gender is going to be female, and if the user pick male, the value for gender is going to be male. So the name is what unites them together. So now the value this time around is going to be female. It's going to be female, and you can, just like we have been doing for the other input feeds, you can make it to be required. That's why, that means you don't want the user to be able to submit the form. You can make it to be required. You don't want the user to be able to submit the form without selecting one or more. So okay, I need to put the label. I just move this. The same thing applies, just some set of replications. So I just move this here, and instead of male, change it to female, and instead of male here to change it to female. Of course, I know that there might be other gender, but for this, let's just, for the sake of time, and let's just limit ourselves to these two genders, and just just to show you the basics of how these things works, and that's why we are trying to use practical examples. And if you try and select male now, if you select female, it's going to deselect male. So that's why radio button or radio input feed, we only take one selection at a time, and this is how to work with that. An example of that is male, and in case there's another time where you need to use that, then you know that you specify it as a radio button. Now moving forward, we have another, let me just duplicate this, so let's just wrap it around div. And the next form feed that we want us to look at this time around is going to be checkbox and radio input feed or input elements. They are almost the same thing. It's just that checkbox allow you to select multiple values. Checkbox allow you to select multiple values, unlike radio button where you can only select just one value. But checkbox, you can select more than one value. And let's see how fast we can go with that now. So label, let's make this label for maybe hobbies. So let's just call it hobbies, and I'll allow the user to, normally you are expected to have more than one hobby. So let's just make it hobbies. Of course, the user might have more than one or more hobbies. So depending on the user. So now we are going to be we are going to be taking this input feed from the user using the checkbox. And the same way we did, the same method we used for the radio button, we're going to be using the same method here. So, but in this time around, it's going to be a checkbox. And the ID here, this is the first checkbox, of course, this is the first one that we are using to specify to the user what they are expected to enter, or the value that we are expecting from them here. So but now the first option that we want to give them is that we want to give them the option of maybe music is their hobby, and you need to specify the name. Notice the difference between checkbox and radio button. Now in the case of radio button, you really write the name and you make it uniform, but in this case you will write the name, interest. For example, let's just make it hobbies, and you now put something like an array. Of course, when you start writing programming and not just markup language, you are going to get to understand array better. And if you have idea of array, then you write a particular name, which can be the variable name that you want to use to collect the multiple options that user enter, and you need to write these square brackets after writing the variable name. So the value for this first one is music. The value for this first one is music, and I make this a self-closing tag. So I put a label after it, and the label will be music, so the so that user will know that if I tick that first checkbox, it is going to be that I have selected the option of music. So if I save it, you see it's an action that this is a checkbox. Now if I want to duplicate, if I want to have other options for the user, I'll just duplicate this. The same rule apply. Now we are still working with the type of checkbox. The ID is this time around. Let's say we want the user to have option hobby of cooking, and so we make this to be cooking. Let's just make it cooking and okay. So if I say, so the same thing up, so if I mark this now, so that I'm able to select multiple values or multiple response, and that's the difference between checkbox and radio button.